Outburst, a Todd Mills mystery. Book 4. Author, R.D. Zimmerman. Publisher, Scribble Pub. Minneapolis, Minnesota, 1998. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 18. Should she really tell him? I... Chris began 10 minutes into her early morning session. Chris sat in her shrink's office as Dr. Dorsey ran one of his hands through his shock of thick hair and stared at her, buckling under his intense eyes. Chris turned and gazed out the window, noting the morning pedestrian traffic on Nicollet Mall in downtown Minneapolis. Well, what the hell was she supposed to say? Should she really tell Dr. Dorsey about Stuart Hawkins? That a soiree of sorts had evidently been set up for this evening? And that Chris wanted nothing more than to run right into the arms of that gorgeous man. Go ahead, urged Dorsey in his soft voice as he sat in the hard wooden chair opposite her. Even though this was only something like her 4th session, she knew his game, his ways, she thought, staring out at the bright sun. The voice might be easy and gentle, but it didn't belie the truth. No. Shrinks were so uptight, so reserved, and, while pretending not to be, so judgmental. They always prided themselves, she was absolutely sure, on having heard everything, but would Dr. Dorsey have heard anything like this, that she'd finger-fucked the most widely known judge in the state? Is there something you'd like to tell me? Asked the good doctor, crossing one leg over the other. Chris couldn't help but grin. In fact, she had to stuff it, an urge to burst into a huge laugh. Unbelievable. Hawkins hadn't read her as a guy. She'd passed as a woman, and she'd actually penetrated him. What is it? Chris averted Dr. Dorsey's dark, intense eyes. She wanted to tell him, this diminutive man in his tweed coat, blue shirt, and khakis. She really did. Chris knew precious little about him, only that he was married, and secretly, she wanted to make him jealous. She wanted to tell him not simply about her crush on Hawkins, but how she'd actually been with him, just what they'd done and where, every little sordid detail, hoping for a reaction of some kind from Dorsey. Hoping that once and for all she'd find out what Dr. Dorsey really thought of her. But no, she thought, she couldn't tell him, right? And instead, Chris looked at the 4-framed duck prints on the beige wall, then focused on the book-crammed teak bookcase standing on the opposite side. Okay, she told herself. Get a grip, get to the point. Don't be an idiot. This guy's costing a fortune by the hour, so why are you here? Instantly, it all came flooding into this tiny room, swirling around her and drowning her in memories. Her smile vanished. Wearing a tight black skirt and an apricot-colored knit top, she shifted in the chair. What is it? Fucking everything. That's what it is. Everything. Chris wanted nothing more than to smile again, but suddenly she was blotting a tear from her left eye, gazing again out the window and at the mall. She saw a handful of people rush by, evidently late for work. Next came 2 old women, out for an early stroll, and 2 buses dieseled by, one after the other. When? Yes, he pried his shrinkly way. I've been taking hormones for a long time now, said Chris, who still got them quite illegally from her source in California. My beard is gone. I have breasts now, but, searching for hope, she turned to him. But when are things going to get good? When am I going to be happy? Dr. Dorsey nodded, jotted a quick note on his clipboard, which rested on his knee, then said, That's why you're here, Chris. You're residing in an extremely difficult land. Gender dysphoria is... No, don't say that, she snapped. Don't use that word, dysphoria. It makes it sound like I'm sick, like I'm mentally ill. I'm not. I'm just confused and I'm questioning, but I'm not crazy. Of course you're not. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply that. Yeah, But, but, she took a deep breath. I don't know. There was a big stink about that last year on the internet. All these trannies objected to that. The use of the word dysphoria to describe us. And, I mean, talk about girl fight. Girl fight. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you. Maybe you don't understand because, you're straight. But in the T community, it's just not PC. Not PC at all. Chris, please trust me. Of course I understand, and thank you for correcting me. Well, I just want you to know that I'm not crazy, and that I think I can be good, and that I want to be happy. She was desperate for him to agree, to say yes. You are good. You are loved. You are worthy of life. And yes, you will be happy. She needed his blessing, his encouragement to keep on. Instead, Dorsey shifted in his chair. Chris, sexual expression and gender expression are two totally different things, and their definitions are much broader than society sees them. We've been taught that there is only the male and female, and that the first is masculine and the second is feminine. The first is assigned, the blue color, the second pink, and the male is supposed to sexually desire the female, and the female only the male. The spectrum, however, is much broader. I know. Keep in mind that it wasn't so very long ago when people believed women were supposed to do the cooking and men were supposed to do the yard work. Just as they believed that gay men only wanted to wear dresses. But is any of that true? No, of course not. Exactly. Everyone, Chris, has the right to their individual place on the continuum. Everyone has the right to contradict what society expects to be different, to be ambiguous even, and everyone has the right to be honest about who they are. Gently, Dorsey said, Chris, you've been quite brave in your life. You've transgressed a boundary society used to say you could not. You were born a boy, but as I look at you now, your gender expression is female. That makes you truly a transgendered individual. But do I keep on gender fucking like this? After all, I do have both breast and a penis. Or do I need to make a decision? I mean, everyone's always asking me if I'm a boy or a girl, if I'm gay or straight. You know what? It doesn't matter. Trust me, you don't need a label to be at peace within yourself. I do understand, though, that this is a confusing situation, that it's complicated by another fact. Something terrible happened to you, didn't it? Chris laughed and choked back tears. No shit. I think we need to look at that some more. What the fuck does that mean? What, you want to look at my empty scrotum? That you want to see the boy without balls, the chick with a dick? Chris looked at him. The doctor stared back, his face blank and emotionless. Shit, she thought. She was always trying to get some sort of reaction out of him, but clearly she'd overdone it. I'm sorry. I guess I'm just a little defensive. I didn't mean to. Chris, all I'm saying is that you have an immense amount of pain surrounding what happened to you. And rightly so. And I think we need to look at that further. Frankly, you haven't dealt completely with your pain, and I think that's causing a lot of the anxiety you're presently experiencing. You need to do that, too, to deal with that pain so you can get to the good stuff in life. I know. She closed her eyes and nodded. I know. I have to accept the past before I can go into the future. Or enjoy the present. Recalling the boy side of herself, it all came flooding back with amazing speed and ease. I was only 15 when it happened, and I never even got the chance to do it with a guy. Shit. I remember jerking off to pictures of guys, but that's as far as things went. As far as... Slow down. Sometimes I think I should just give in. That I should just go the whole M to float. All they'd have to do is turn my penis inside out and make me a nice, well, you know, vagina. She tugged at one of her gold hoops. On the internet, I read about a hospital out in Colorado they call Trans Central Station, and They've done almost 5,000 operations there for not even 10,000 bucks. They make you a vagina that's almost 3 inches deep, and if you have enough tissue, corpus spongiosum, or whatever that is, they even make you a functional clitoris. Chris, you might in fact decide to have the operation. You might feel better and more complete as a post-op transsexual. Maybe, I don't know, but I just hate the way our society thinks male or female, black or white, straight or gay, innocent or guilty. It's just so binary. It's very restricting, isn't it? But you can decide to stay just the way you are, and that's why you're here. All I want is to help you sort all this out so you can find your own happiness. Dr. Dorsey moved ever so slightly forward, focused all of himself upon Chris, and said, "Let's go back to the beginning again. You want all the gory details?" She took a deep breath, because she never talked about it. Never. "It's not pretty, and let me tell you, it hurt like hell. But No, I want you to start earlier than that. You said last week that you always knew you were gay." "Right. The truth is that I never wondered if I was different or any of that crap. I always knew I was. I always knew I was gay, right from the start. By that, I don't mean puberty. No, I'm talking age 5, maybe 6. And how did that make you feel?" "Me? I felt totally normal. It was fucking everybody else that had a problem with it." "You're..." Chris held up her hand and just kept barreling along. "I was never masculine. Not at all. It just wasn't part of me. I was way at one end of your spectrum, you see. Way at the femme end of things. I feel sorry for gay guys who are more the other way. The butch ones. The masculine types. Sometimes they have a lot to sort out, how to be queer and butch at the same time. Whereas with me, it was pretty clear-cut. I mean, this stuff," she said, tugging at first her skirt, then her blouse, "comes real natural to me." He asked it so bluntly that it didn't even hurt. "Do you think you would have dressed in women's clothing if you hadn't been castrated?" Chris shrugged. "I don't know. Probably. I mean, I'm sure I would have at least done drag, after all. I was awfully interested in my mother's cosmetics and clothes. Even as a kid, I was obsessed with the ideal of disguise, of putting something on and becoming someone else. That was what was fun about it." "Okay, tell me more about your family." Chris opened her mouth, hesitated, then said, "Unfortunately, they're as good as dead to me." "Yes, you said that. You told me how they cut you off after you went to California." "Right," she said, her voice all but non-existent. "Most people are born one way and either accept that or struggle with it. I was struggling, of course, a lot, both with my sexuality and my gender expression, but then there was the accident, which, in a weird, awful way, opened up everything. All the possibilities, So I went out to California to try living as a woman, and that's when my family disowned me. After the accident, the doctors put me on testosterone. I guess, technically, it was androgen. And my parents wanted me to keep taking that and get a pair of fake nuts, but that just didn't feel right. I've always been very effeminate looking, so I decided to go that way, toward my natural tendencies and my natural strengths. So I quit the one and started taking estrogen and dressing only in women's clothes. And then, of course, things went from bad to horrible, because of what happened out in L.A. Now my parents tell their friends that I'm dead." She bit her lip, tried not to cry. "They're shits, real shits. My cousin, the one I'm living with here, is my one and only relative who will talk to me, and we're not getting along so great now either." "I know. How does it make me feel?" "Awful. Horrible. To be perfectly honest, it killed something deep inside me." "I'm sorry. I mean, how would you feel if your own family told the neighbors that their son died in a car crash?" Things were bad enough before. She took a deep breath, tried to stuff away the pain. Well, let's just say I'm surprised my own father hasn't already come after me and gunned me down. We need to go into all of that at length, of course, but first, just tell me about them again, about your parents and brothers and sister. I need some more background. When did they find out you were gay? She ran her hand briefly through her blonde hair, her family. Chris sat silent for a few minutes, and then she gave him the stats. Chris was the second oldest of four, 3 boys, including herself, or himself, 1 girl. They lived in Duluth, where Chris's dad worked as a policeman and her mom as a nurse. They knew, all of them knew right from the start, too. That was the great unspoken truth of my family. Little Chris was a fairy, everyone knew, but no one dared say it. She continued explaining how her mother was always tired because she worked the night shift, and her father was always, well, strict. Of Irish Catholic background. His job as a cop made him keep odd hours, and so he expected his kids to behave to be the very model of respectability. Tom and Mike, the 2 other boys, were the oldest and the youngest, respectively, and both were hockey nuts and champs and their father's pride. Mary, the 3rd child, was Miss Social and went, of course, from captain of her high school cheerleading team to homecoming queen. How did your brothers and sisters treat you? Asked Dr. Dorsey. What do you think? For the most part, my sister was pretty nice to me, and my brothers, well, they were always hammering on me. Chris smiled. You know what my big form of rebellion was? What? I never, not once, put on a pair of skates. That's tantamount to being a traitor in Minnesota. You did that on purpose? Of course I did. I did it as much to thumb my nose at my dad and my brothers as to protect myself. She lifted up one of her legs. I mean, look at how skinny these ankles are. I would have been massacred on a hockey rink. So you've always been good at taking care of yourself? She shrugged. No, I've always been good at surviving. Somehow I've made it this far, haven't I? Yes, you have. Quite early on, she explained, Chris had learned which friends were okay and which were not. For there were those who would tolerate him and those who would torment. He learned quickly, too, which school halls were safe for sissies. The ones with teachers around and which school activities were okay. Badminton and football being the 2 opposite extremes. Kids are awfully mean. They're horrible, really. So cruel. Gazing out the window, not really thinking what she was saying, but knowing it was some kind of big truth, it just rolled out of Chris's mouth. I'm amazed at how much I hate straight people. Dorsey seemed taken aback, but struggled not to show it. Why? Because it's a straight world and I've always had to be on guard. I've always had to do this double-think crap. I've always had to monitor myself. How would you like to live like that? How would you like worrying all the time that what people would do to you, how they would hurt you if they knew the truth of who you were? I grew up with it. It was always in my head. I was always afraid, and now, it's worse. Straight guys think I'm disgusting, but God, no wonder she was going crazy. But what's worse is that now gay guys are freaked out by me too. I mean, not even the fucking homos know what to think of me, where to categorize me, and you should see the muscle queens, the ones on steroids. They're the worst. The most intolerant of anyone different from them. I mean, they're as conservative and inflexible in their ways as a Republican housewife. I really scare the shit out of them. She looked down at her broad hands, saw how soft and lovely they'd become. The truth is that I was always a big femme, right from the start, from when I was a kid. But I never wanted to lose my dick and balls. I was just an effeminate gay kid. In fact, I would never have thought about any of this if. So tell me about that night. For a long time, Chris couldn't speak. Then she muttered. It was January, and it was so fucking cold. as cold as it ever got, pushing past 30 below zero. Then again, that was midwinter in Duluth. Cold. It was night, and their parents were working, their mom on duty at the hospital until 11, and their dad due back sometime around 10. Mary, Miss Social Butterfly, was off for the night at a friend's house. Which left you and Tom and Mike, where? Up in your rooms? No, we were downstairs. Together? Her voice was nearly a whisper. Yes. Yes, they were in the living room. The three boys, together. It was kind of a small room, a sofa, two big old chairs, and a TV in the corner. A TV that had been on for hours. Already they'd watched Family Ties and a repeat of The Cosby Show. Tom was almost 17. I just turned 15, and Mike was 11. A very loud, very active 11. Their mother had made them dinner, a tuna fish hot dish with peas and some crumbled potato chips on top. She'd left it in the oven, just as she always did, and told them when to eat and reminded them of two things. Now, you boys, listen up, she had said, lecturing them, as she put on a second sweater, then wrapped a scarf around her neck, put on a hat, and finally her heaviest coat. Don't forget to turn the oven off. I don't want it left on for hours like you did last week. And don't go outside. It's too cold. I mean it. No going out. Am I clear? Do you understand? Yes, they'd all replied. Gramps and Nana are just a block away, so you call them if you need anything, right? Right. The numbers above the phone. But it was too much. Three boys locked up inside on the coldest of winter nights. They just got antsy, that was all. We ate our dinner, that stupid tuna fish crap, explained Chris with a sneer, and then took our dishes into the kitchen. We got some ice cream and came back to the living room to watch some more TV. It was chocolate ice cream, I'm sure of that. And, we just started horsing around. Mike wanted to sit on the couch. Tom and I told him there wasn't room. Then all of a sudden, the two of them were wrestling, and a foot came over and kicked my bowl of ice cream. It flipped right over, dumped right in my lap. Tom and Mike had started laughing, Chris continued, because they knew that Chris was going to get into trouble, big trouble, for making a mess, and so did Chris, which was why he ran into the kitchen, dumped his bowl in the sink, and then charged into the basement. He tore down the narrow wooden steps, over to the old Maytag, and ripped off his jeans and underwear. There was a big pile of laundry, and he hid his clothes beneath it all. I was just standing there in my shirt, continued Chris, forever horrified by the event that had changed her life. And then I looked over and saw one of my sister's skirts. It was a plaid wool kilt, blue and white and yellow. It was hanging from a clothesline down there, and I don't know, I just grabbed it. I pulled off the wooden clothespins, then slipped it on. Why not? It was kind of fun. Exciting. Yes, sexually exciting. Well, she thought for a moment. Not really. Was this the first time you tried on a piece of woman's clothing? Chris sat quite still for quite a long time. No. I'd fooled around with my mom's clothes a few times, her high heels, her bra. Then what happened? I put on the skirt, and then I started walking around, in the basement. I was just going to wear it for a moment or two. It looked so warm, and my sister always looked so pretty when she wore it. But then, shit, I must have been nuts. What the hell was I thinking? I heard the TV. I thought they were both upstairs. I didn't think they'd come down. But they did. Yes, said Chris, her eyes brewing with tears. I was down there in a t-shirt and my sister's little kilt. And Tom and Mike were on the stairs. She shook her head, wiped her eyes. They started screaming, calling me a homo, laughing and saying they were going to tell Mom and Dad and everyone at school. It was like being outed by your own brothers, it was awful. And I was so scared that I didn't know what to do. Without thinking, Chris had ripped off the skirt, then grabbed a pair of gym shorts from the laundry basket. By then, the brothers were laughing and screaming, even pushing Chris around. Chris had no choice. He had to leave, had to get out of there. I thought I could make it down to my grandparents', explained Chris. I'd run down there lots of times without a jacket, so I didn't even really think about it. I just went running upstairs and flying out the front door in my t-shirt, those gym shorts, and a pair of socks. Chris blotted her eyes with the back of her hand. I wish I could blame it on something or someone else, but I guess the only guilty person is me. Go on, Chris. So I tore down our front walk down the street. I was running as fast as I could, wanting to get away from it all, wanting to hide for the rest of my life. My parents were going to kill me, I was sure of that. And then the tears were coming faster. And then I hit that patch of ice. Chris bowed her head into both hands and sobbed. Overwhelmed by the humiliation as well as the horror of it, she couldn't stop, couldn't block the tears. One event on one night had changed the entire rest of her life. It's not fair, she finally managed to say, her face pulsing red and streaked with tears. No, of course not, replied Dr. Dorsey. Then came the anger surging through her with such hate and turpitude that Chris held her hands in front of her, clenched them into the tightest of fists. Using all her strength, thinking of everything she was so pissed about, she squeezed as hard as she could, digging her artificial nails into the palms of her hands. You know how fucking mad I am? Do you have any idea at all? Well, she said, unclenching her fist and exposing her punctured and bloodied hands. Let me show you. At the sight of the blood, Dr. Dorsey sat back. Then a moment later glanced at the clock up on his teak bookcase and said, Well, okay, that's enough for today. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.